Welcome to the Wealth is in the Details podcast. In this podcast, financial planner Peter Raskin helps families and business owners understand and prepare for their wealth journey. Along the way, thoughtful and detailed planning can provide clarity and confidence as clients confront a multitude of financial decisions. Listen in as Peter shares stories and insight into people's wealth journeys. Now, let's get into today's podcast.
Hello and welcome to Wealth is in the Details with Peter Raskin from Raskin Planning Group. Peter, it's so good to be back with you, or should I say, it's so good to have you back.
Thanks, Aric. Yeah, we were away for about 10 days.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we just had a glorious vacation in Switzerland, hiking in the Alps with our three grown-up kids, and just had a ball. All of us really had fun together.
Now, I've never been to Switzerland. So what was your favorite part of being there, besides being with your family? I know that's probably number one, but
that was absolutely number one.
Yeah.
But I think we had planned it. I talked about a travel group that we've worked with in the past, and they set up a really nice itinerary for us. So we flew into Zurich. We went to a mountain village called Grindelwald, which is right in the Alps, and just a beautiful, beautiful spot for hiking and for skiing. You know, the Swiss use their mountains for really pleasure now. They've used it in the past for lots of dairy and their cows. But they've got lots of infrastructure. So that was, to me, the most impressive thing about Switzerland was just the incredible infrastructure, transportation, the trains, the buses, the getting from here to there. When you're on the mountains hiking, it's just glorious. The views are spectacular. But then you've got wonderful places to stop and get a full meal. There are hotels on the top of mountains.
Wow.
They bring trains and gondolas up on the top of huge peaks, at 9,000, 12,000 square feet of height.
Wow.
And so it's really just a spectacular spot. So my favorite thing about the vacation was the kids and being together, but also just the hiking and the way we can get around. You can get around in Switzerland. It's just so easy. It's expensive. It's a really expensive place to be. But we had a ball. Just a great time.
Oh, that sounds like a fantastic place to be. That is definitely on my wife and I's bucket list for sure.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah, I've seen the views, pictures and things, and it just looks glorious, really, honestly. So, sounds like you had a wonderful time.
We did. It was just great.
All right.
And so today, I've got good news and bad news for our listeners. The good news is that you're our guest today. and we're going to use this as an opportunity to get to know you. And the reason why you're our guest is today is the last time that you'll be hosting our podcast. And I'm just love to introduce you personally. You've been a wonderful host to us over these 104 episodes that we've recorded, I think. And you've led us along a wonderful journey, and I thank you so much for it. But I'm hoping that our listeners can get to know you a little bit more. You don't necessarily always share exactly what you're up to. And this is an opportunity for us to hear about your world and what you'll be doing going forward.
Well, I appreciate that, Peter. It has been a journey, and I want to just correct one thing. I'm the co-host, sir. You, sir, are the host of this show.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and I mean, you've led me on a journey just as much as I've been along this with you. I've learned a ton from you. I love the guests that you brought on. I love the topics that you brought to the audience. Your heart is for education, and you do such a good job of that. So I appreciate you just allowing me to be a small part of this. And I am going to miss it. But Yeah, my wife and I are doing something that we're very passionate about and we love, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, what you briefly told me just sounds wonderful, and I'm very, very happy for you and your family going forward. But I think what I'd like to do, and I do this for all our guests, as you know, I ask about their journey. So tell us about your journey, how you came to where you are right now.
All right. Well, let's see. Way back when my wife and I were first married, we had like very little money, Peter. And so we lived in a lower income area when we got pregnant. We were going to wait 5 years for kids, and we were surprised 5 months after we got married that we were pregnant. And as much of a blessing as that was, it was definitely a difficult time. So we lived in a low income area in some apartments, and I'd come home from work, and there's these kids that are all playing out in the parking lot, and they'd wave hi and I'd wave hi. You know, it was just kind of that normal activity in the neighborhood. So then, a couple days later, I was walking in from work, 5, 6 o'clock dragging, working a long day. And one of the kids says, "Hey," and he throws me the football, and I throw it back and wave to him again and go inside. Like the next day, Peter, there was a knock at my door, "Hey, can you come out and play?" Like, really? And I'm looking at my wife going, "Can I go out and play?" So I went out there for about half an hour and just kind of tossed the football around. And there was this older guy that was out there walking around. Got to know him as well. And I say older, I don't even know how old he was at that point, because I was 21 maybe. And he was probably in his, mid 50s to early 60s, right? So at that point, he was an older guy. And now I'm that, almost 50-year-old. But he was doing every Friday night, he'd do like a movie night and snack night for the kids. And he was just trying to keep them off the street. And I was talking to him, and he said, out of those 11 kids that are standing out there, none of them have a dad in their life. And I couldn't believe that. I was just like, because my parents were still together. And my dad was involved, and my wife's parents were still together, and they were involved. And then just to see all these kids that didn't have a father figure in their life. And so he was really trying to do stuff on Friday nights to keep him off the streets. And so my wife and I started working with him and just I should say working, but volunteering to do this. And we got involved in our church with the youth group, and just youth have always been on our heart. And through some different things and getting different jobs, and I traveled around the country for a while with my family, my wife and kids, for a computer company, which was really, really an amazing time. My son turned 4, and my daughter was, about a year and a half old. And we're like, we have to settle down, and we still wanted to work with kids. And we had seen an ad probably a year and a half earlier when my wife was pregnant with our daughter for Boys Town in Nebraska. And I'm from Washington State. And so we looked into it, got an interview, and then they flew us out to Nebraska and interviewed us, and we became family teachers. They asked us to be in Omaha in Nebraska, the Boys Town main campus. And so we did that from 2001 to 2012, raised 68 young men, at-risk youth, and loved every minute of it. It was amazing. It was tough. It was difficult work, emotionally, right? Because these kids are coming from really, really tough backgrounds, and some of them succeed. Most of them do through the program. Some of them don't. And so that's the harder part. But we did that, like I said, for almost 12 years and loved it. And we left that position for a couple different reasons. Our kids were getting older, and we needed to spend more one-on-one time with them. And my wife continued to work with Boys Town in a different capacity. And I started a coaching and consulting company with a dear friend of mine who had been a family teacher with us back in 2001 that we'd all started together. So we formed a fast relationship, and that's Matt Halloran, whom I'm sure you know, and is part of Proud Mouth. Yep. Part of the Proud Mouth group. And so he and I started his coaching company and started working with financial advisors and coaching and consulting them. And it was great. And I started my own company in 2015. And a few years later, he called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this podcasting thing going. I need your voice. You know the industry. Let's work with some folks and make some podcasts." I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." And that led me here to you. And I think we've been working together for almost 4 years.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Yeah, so you went from Washington State to Nebraska to work at this Boys Town. Mm-hmm. Could you go into a little bit more detail about Boys Town, what it is and how it was established and who you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. most of our listeners probably have seen the movie or know of the movie Boys Town from 1938. It was Mickey Rooney, Spencer Tracy. It was a hit. He won the Oscar for it. And the Oscar is actually, or Academy Award. I think that's the Oscar. That's actually in the museum here at Boys Town, in the little Hall of History there. But that movie was about Father Flanagan, who started Boys Town in 1917. And when he started, it was actually outside of Omaha. It was removed from Omaha because Father Flanagan wanted to serve kids. First, he started with men and quickly realized that men don't really change. The homeless men and the men that were drinking and getting into other substances, they really didn't want to change their behaviors. And he realized, I need to start with these kids that are homeless, because he saw them all over the streets. You got to, think of 1917, 1918, that were really tough times. And you had even the Great Depression was coming very soon, which created a lot of homeless kids. So he wanted to help all the kids, and he had them all housed in one building. And then Omaha said, you can't do that because you have black kids living with white kids, and you have Jewish kids living with, the laws were different back then. And unfortunately, that was the case. And then he said, okay, I'm going to move it then. So he moved it about 10 miles outside of Omaha. Now, since then, Omaha has grown around Boys Town, but Boys Town is its own city. And the reason it's its own city is because Father Flanagan made it its own city, so he didn't have to abide by those specific laws that were back in the day. So he could have all races, all creeds, all colors, all religions live with him, and the team that he had. And so it was just an amazing thing that he built. And at one point, he had like 1,200 kids on the Boys Town campus. We don't have that many now. I mean, that would be a huge amount. But he had homeless kids come from all over the country. So the movie was in 1938, which gained, Boys Town some popularity. And there are a lot of people that have been donating religiously, if you will, to Boys Town. One notable thing that I want to mention is that there was the backing that he had. Father Flanagan did such a great job of making friends and really influencing people to understand the plight of these kids, that people really wanted to help out. And there was a Jewish gentleman that really saw Father's heart, and he said, you know what? I'm going to help. And he helped tremendously with financing to buy a farm, to build Boys Town on that site, and continued to support Father Flanagan in his dream for years. And so it wasn't the Catholic Church that supported the building of it. And they did eventually, they had nuns that came out and supported and helped to raise the kids. And there was a lot of that influence, which was great. But really starting out, it was a community effort. And yeah, it was amazing. So we serve a population that a lot of the kids that we serve now aren't necessarily homeless sitting on the street. A lot of them are coming out of lockup. A lot of them have been removed from their home for different reasons. Some because of their own behaviors, but it's also the parents and family members that are contributing to that household, that they may just need to have that house go through a reckoning, if you will. They need to help have the family be able to teach their children better. And the kids need to have some behaviors changed, as far as maybe getting into some trouble with the law or at school or with other kids.
Hi, this is Catherine Broy from the Raskin Planning Group. Apologies for the interruption. Thanks so much for listening to Wealth is in the Details. We hope you're enjoying it so far. If you have any questions or would like to talk more about this topic, please visit our website at www.raskinplanning.com. Look for the podcast's show notes and connect with us via social media.
So you were working at Boys Town for, it sounded like, about 10, 12 years. Is that
Yep.
about right?
Yes, sir.
And then you came out and you did this kind of work. You did other kind of consulting and all. And so it sounds like you've decided to go back. What is it that drove you to that? Why the change at this point in time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Couple things. Number one, we've never stopped working with youth. That's still where our heart is. I love helping people reach their goals and their dreams, no matter what that is. And that's why I was a consultant. That's why I do the podcasting, to help people build an audience and change their business, hopefully, and serve more people, because that's where your heart is, Peter. And that's where my clients' hearts are. They want to serve. And that's where my wife and I are. We've just been that way ever since we have been together. And just like every other industry that has trouble finding qualified people to work, Boys Town was having the same issue. And so last year they did something very interesting. They said anybody who's been a family teacher in the past that still works for Boys Town, which there are a lot. There are a lot of people that start off as family teachers and they go to other areas of the organization, including my wife. She was working for a program. Boys Town's very, very large. It would take 10 hours to explain how many different branches of Boys Town there are. But Boys Town tries to work with the families before the kid is ever removed from the home, because that's not ideal. We want the children to be with their parents if possible. Removing them or having them come to live at Boys Town is kind of the last resort. That's a necessity. Or the judges are saying, instead of lockup, you can go to Boys Town. So there's a choice there. But she was working for a program called MST, which is multisystemic therapy. And therapists would go into the home before a child was ever removed, work with the school, work with the parents, work with the kids. And if there was a PO involved, they'd work with a PO to help the kid.
Parole officer.
Correct. A parole officer. Yep.
Yeah.
Or a caseworker, depending on their circumstances. But they would work with them to help the child make better decisions and stay in home and keep the family intact. And so they'd work with every aspect of it to make sure all the bases were covered. So she was working for that group, and Boys Town said, anybody who's been a family teacher in the past, we need help with assistance. And what I mean by that is every family teaching couple that lives on campus, we live in the home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, right? We are with these kids. They're our boys. Each family teaching couple has an assistant that works with them for 45 hours a week, because we do get some downtime. We get some time away, and our assistants there to cover. Plus, it's always good to have them in the home when we're working as well. So the three of us are helping these young men and young women, because there are girls at Boys Town as well. We help them to develop. And so there's a shortage of assistants and there's a shortage of family teachers. So when they put out this all call, they were just basically saying anybody who wants to work, a day or a day a week, if you want to, it's basically an on-call position. We'll tell you when we need people. And if you can make it, great. If not, just let us know. And so my wife said, I want to do that. And I was like, okay, here we go. If she goes back to that role and she starts working with the kids again, I know she's going to catch the bug again, which I was prepared for. And I, wasn't too hard to twist my arm either to come back, but she went a couple times to help out in some homes and work with some kids. And Peter, she came home from a long day, 12-hour day with these kids. And she was just like, oh, let me tell you what we did. And she just, it was just nonstop telling me all the exciting things she did and how much fun they had. And, this kid struggled with this, but then he worked through it. And I knew that she was going to want to go back at some point. And then probably about 3 months later, Boys Town said, hey, we need family teachers. Would you guys please come back and help us kind of build a community again? Because currently I think there's 9 empty homes on campus. That means there's 9 homes that don't have family teachers in them, which means there's no kids in those homes. And if you think about the numbers, that's around 72 to 80 kids that are not being served, about 80 kids that are still sitting in lockup instead of being in a home, going to high school or middle school, playing on a football team, being a normal kid, as much as possible. So we said, through a lot of prayer and consideration, we said, yeah, we'll come back. And now we're back.
So how many kids are in your home?
Currently, I have 6. I'll have 2 more by the time school starts. So 8 is our capacity. And I'm using air quotes on a podcast with nobody can see. But we have 8 young men that will live with us. And usually around April, we may go to 9 or 10, just for a very temporary time, because I have 2 seniors this year. So I'll lose 2 in May to graduation. So they like to try to get kids in before then so they can acclimate. And then once we have the graduates leave, then we're right back at 8.
Is this a public school or is it homeschool? What's the educational structure for these kids?
Yeah.
And what are the ages?
It's very interesting, Peter, because people, when you think of a youth facility, right? I mean, that's kind of what this is. It's people think of a hospital type of setting. If you Google map and put Boys Town into a Google map, you will look at what looks like a college campus or a very wealthy neighborhood. We each have our homes. I have a home with basically 9 bedrooms that houses 8 boys, my wife and I. There is a high school on campus, a middle school on campus. It is private. It is a treatment facility. So it's only Boys Town kids that go to these high schools and middle schools. Right now, I believe our population is right around 375 kids on campus with all the homes. And so I can't say enough about the high school and middle school program. Most of our kids come to us and they're 2 to 3 years behind in their education, at least. And there's for a lot of reasons. Number one, maybe a lot of truancies. Maybe they just haven't been doing well in school or haven't been to school at all for a while. Maybe they've been in lockup. Some of the kids are coming out of lockup for 9 months, which they're really not getting an education while they're there. So the schools do a great job for every year that a young person is in one of these schools. They're almost catching up on 2.5 years worth of education because they work that detailed with them. And we have them, they go to summer school as well, at least for part of the day. So the education here is top notch. And in fact, they just built a brand new high school that's going to be opening in August. They had torn down the old one because it had been there probably since the 60s. And now they've got a completely modern high school it's the most modern high school in the state by far. And it's pretty amazing. So again, that's through the work of donors and people that have helped out Boys Town through the years, create a great foundation that will last for hopefully eternity, as long as it needs to. But yeah, the education is great. As far as the ages, we serve a lot of different ages, but I would say the bulk of the kids are 12 and older. They really don't like to have kids younger than that because to be removed from your home from that age is difficult. And you don't want a child to become what's called institutionalized. You don't want them to be in a program for so long that it's not normal for them. They don't acclimate normally. Now, we are family homes. We are family style. We go fishing. We go on bike rides. We take them to the movies. We went to a baseball game last week. We do what we can as like a normal family, but it's still behavior modification. It's still helping these kids through the roughest parts of their life in a lot of ways. Sometimes we do have younger kids that come here, but normally if they're younger than 12, it's because they have a sibling here, an older sibling, because we don't want to split them up if possible. But sometimes just one of the children need to, be removed from the home. Sometimes it's a parental issue and all the kids are removed. I mean, you've heard those stories. So sometimes there's kids younger, but I've never heard of a child coming younger than 8 or 9 years old. But that's because they had an older sibling here on campus already.
Mm-hmm. So I just find this really just fascinating. Tell me what a typical day is like for you.
Yeah, it's a little crazy, right? I mean, I'm sure there are families out there that are listening to this, or the audience members that maybe they're part of a big family. Maybe they had a lot of siblings, and that's kind of what it looks like. I wake up in the morning. My wife and I, we wake up usually within 15 to 20 minutes of each other. It's like, okay, who's going to sleep in a little bit today? But we're up ready to go because our boys are active. So sometimes we're up early for cross country. The guys that are in cross country have to leave at a certain time. Right now it's the summertime. So usually nobody's leaving the house before about 7:15 to do any type of sports, but summer school starts at 9:00. And so we're up, we're getting breakfast. Sometimes it's cold cereal, but my wife loves to cook. Peter, you and I've talked about that a lot. She loves to cook. So a lot of the kids around our neighborhood are a little jealous of my boys because they get hot breakfast burritos and they know they're eating well in our house. And so every once in a while we'll get a random kid from another house come over. Hey, Mrs. Johnson, what you got for breakfast? And so it's like, all right, come on in. But it's just getting everybody up, making sure that everybody's cleaning their rooms, doing their chores. They're assigned a chore for a week as far as like our downstairs area. So somebody's going to be dining room. So they got to make sure everything's, swept and mopped and the table's clean and all that before they go to bed, and spot check it in the morning. And it's just a big family, right? And it's just, we have appointments during the day. That the main reason that I'm wrapping up my podcasting stuff with you and my other clients, Peter, is because Boys Town doesn't allow us to have another job for very good reason. I mean, we have 8 kids, right? It's busy. We have doctor's appointments to go to. We have therapy appointments to take kids to. We have, this morning, my wife had to get up early and take one of my young men to the DMV to get his license and his card because he's going to be traveling this weekend to go for a home visit. And
so it's like any family.
It is a family environment.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100% a family environment. They go to school. Sometimes I get a phone call from the school. Hey, so-and-so is struggling today. I may go up to the school and see what's going on, talk to them, and, sit with them in class maybe if I have to. They don't like that, but we'll do it, right? And, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Sometimes a lot of times we get calls from the school that said, hey, so-and-so did a great job today. Wanted to let you know that he really participated in class and was a, great leader for the other peers in the class. And we love that. And they get rewarded for that. So they earn positive things for positive things they do. And if they do some negative things, and there's consequences, just like in real life.
Yeah. I'm sure there's sibling stuff that goes on too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Horseplay is something we have to address. I mean, I'd love the boys to be able to play and roughhouse like a normal family, but you also have some kids with some abuse issues in the past. And so you've got to be very careful and walk that fine line of what is acceptable, in the home and what's not. And so you just have to be able to respect all their histories and know that, and just understand what is going to help a kid succeed or what's going to frustrate them and set them back.
Yeah. So this is what you're doing for how long? How long will you and your wife be a family there?
I don't know, Peter. I honestly don't know, but I could see when we came back, it was interesting because first thing was that we recognized that when we got into the home, we had a couple of kids come in at first. We got 3 right away, and it just felt like we were just on a 10-year vacation from the first time, right? It didn't feel like we missed a beat. This is in our blood, and the teaching there's very specific way we have to teach these kids. And it just came right back to us. And, in that moment, I was like, man, this is weird. It's like riding a bike. And I said right away that I'm good for another 10 years easily. We're passionate about this. We have so many success stories from our previous time that helps to fuel us. When you first become a family teacher, you almost look at these kids and go, are they going to make it? Are they going to succeed? Will they be a success story? Well, out of 68 kids the last time, most of them are success stories. We keep in contact with most of those young men, and we see their families growing. I've got one young man down in Fort Worth that, he didn't have a father figure in his life, really. His dad, the dad that he did have was kind of a jerk, honestly, and treated him really, really poorly. And he never figured that he'd ever have kids because he's like, I don't want to be like that. I don't think I can be a good dad. And there's so much doubt and lack of self-worth with a lot of these kids that's part of what we do is help them to understand you have value, you have worth, you are a good human being. You're not defined by the mistakes you've made or defined by what other people have told you. You are valuable. And this young man went on to do great things, and he graduated from Boys Town High School and went into the Navy and just through conversations, like, I didn't know what it was like to be a good dad. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, he said, I looked at you and your family was happy, and you didn't yell at your kids, because we had biological kids in the home the last time we were here. And now he's got 4 kids.
Oh, that's wife, wonderful. Right? Great story.
Wife. Yeah. And he coaches his son's teams, and he's got all these other kids that look up to him. He's like, man, I feel like I'm a mentor. I said, dude, you are. I said, you're coaching 2 baseball teams. All these kids are looking at you like you're the man. These are 8-year-olds that are having a great time and playing ball with their friends. And I said, that's what it's all about. And the experiences that you're giving them, helping them to achieve, whatever it is, whether it's success or learning from failures, they're going to remember that. And he loves it, and he's loving life. And he still does not have a relationship with his dad because his dad is still very toxic, and he knows that. And as an adult, he's like, I just don't have time for people like that anymore. He's my blood, but I'm not going to put in effort to somebody who's just going to try to tear me down. And I don't need that.
Yeah. I mean, in our world, we need to define family in lots of different ways.
Absolutely.
And it's not the family sometimes that we've been given.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not, but
Yeah.
I think hearing about your experience is just reminds me how lucky so many of us are. So many people in this country and around the world. They're starting off a bunch of yards behind the starting point for others. Like I think about my world and my life and our kids. They started on the 10, 20, 25 yard line.
Yeah.
Lots of advantages. We have a loving family, and we may not have been perfect parents, but at least I think our kids would say this, that we cared for them.
Yeah.
And just that alone is a great assist.
But the thing is that the way you're saying it is absolutely right. It's generational. Your father was a big part of your life, and I know that you lost him this year. We talked about that. You were blessed, and you have a legacy there, a legacy that you continued with your children, and a lot of your listeners are continuing in their children and in their grandchildren. And you're absolutely right. A lot of these kids don't have that legacy, or the legacy that they have is abuse. Legacy they have is not having a grandfather in their life because he left the picture a long time ago, and then his father left the picture a long time ago. And it's just a very toxic, reoccurring theme in some families, and it's unfortunate, and it's not fair, Peter. I mean, it's just not fair to a child to be put in that position. And so I commend you. I've just loved listening to everything that you've gone through in the last few years and been a part of in the last few years, and adapting to COVID, with your father and his situation, and then how you got your kids involved in that, and visited as much as you could, and spent time as family, and Switzerland as family. Those are the things that energize me, because that's what I hope that these kids can experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And with assistance, with help, and with love, they have a chance. They have an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone needs and should have. It's a great thing you're doing, and I can hear the passion in your voice. And thank you for not only helping with our podcast for the last few years, but doing this other work, which is just so important. And we are in our society, we should be grateful for those that give. And thank you for all that you and your wife are doing. It's wonderful.
Our pleasure. We get I can't be selfish, but we do get a ton out of it, right? We get memories.
Isn't that why people do good things? Is not only because they give, but because when you give, you get something back. That's my experience. Whenever I volunteer at anything, be part of any community, I get as much or more back.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know that, again, through our conversations, you work with your folks on being able to do that. A lot of the folks that you work with are in positions to, now that retirement has come, they're volunteering, and they're giving back to their community in different ways, and financially they're giving back to their community in different ways. And I know that you help unlock those passions within your clients, and that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And many of our clients are really thoughtful about that, and it's wonderful. It gives me great pleasure to hear what they want, how they want to help people. It's really, really wonderful. Speaking of helping, and it's not why you're here as a guest on the podcast, but if people are interested in hearing more about Boys Town, where should they begin looking? How can they find out more about it? And if they do want to help, how do they do that?
Yeah, it's easy. boystown.org. There's a ton of great information there. Watch the movie, from 1938. It'll kind of give you a spark of how it all began. And then boystown.org is the website. I have not been there in a while, but I know there's links to donate, links to find the different programs, to see different stories, so you can kind of see what it's all about. There is a cafe on campus. There's a hall of history, a little museum. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And it is an open campus still at this point to be able to drive through and see, what Boys Town's all about. But that's only, obviously if you're driving through Nebraska, there's not a whole lot of other reasons, to go through Omaha, Peter. But if somebody's going through, it's always fun to see Boys Town and drive through and just be in awe of the fact that looks like a neighborhood, looks like a normal city. It's kind of fun. So yeah, they can find info there. But great. I would just say, whatever your passion is, whatever your heart is leaning towards, just figure out how you can contribute to that passion. I mean, some people want to further people's education, which is great. There's all sorts of ways to do that with scholarships and grants in different capacities, in different schools, different states. They all need the help. Animals are a big passion for people. Find out a way to plug into a community and how you can help different things. Whatever your passion is, just follow it. That's all.
I agree 100%. I always think about the little pebble that you throw into the pond and all those all the ripples that begin to go from there, and it just keeps on going. So any little bit that you're helping, wherever it is, whatever you're doing, is going to help our society, help our communities, and whether it's in Nebraska or Massachusetts or California, it's all good stuff.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Aric, you know what? It's been wonderful to work with you. It's been wonderful to get to know you. You've been a super, super advocate of our firm and me, and I can't thank you enough. It's just been a great experience, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Oh, we will. And here's the thing, Peter. I don't say this lightly. Come to dinner. Whenever you have the opportunity, come eat dinner at our house, because
I would love it.
My table seats 14 people. There's always room for more, but it's going to be pretty full when you're here, and it'll be a little loud. I got a bunch of teenage boys eating. So you're always welcome, Peter. I hope you know that.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate the invite. And next time I'm in Nebraska, it will definitely take place. Oh,
please, for sure. Yeah. So thank you. And again, thank you for everything you've done and everything you've taught me.
And we will have an additional another co-host, and right. She'll be joining us the next time we record.
Yeah, so and she's amazing.
I look forward to getting to know her and working with her. So thank you.
Absolutely, you bet. And of course, one last time, last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Wealth is in the Details podcast with Peter Raskin. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Peter comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. We humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually does help others find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Raskin Planning Group, this is Aric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth is in the Details podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corp. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Peter Raskin is a registered representative of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Securities offered through Lincoln Financial Advisors Corp., a broker-dealer, member SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through SageMark Consulting, a division of Lincoln Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Insurance offered through Lincoln affiliates and other fine companies. Raskin Planning Group is a marketing name for registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation and its representatives do not provide legal or tax advice. You may want to consult a legal or tax advisor regarding any legal or tax information as it relates to your personal circumstances.